Midlife isn't a decline, it's a return. A return to the body, to the inner knowing, and to a power we have often been taught to silence. On this episode of The Soul Mirror, we are joined by Dr. Marissa Heisel, a holistic chiropractor, midwife, and fierce voice in women's health. For over 26 years, she has guided women to back to themselves through the wisdom of the body and the healing intelligence of nature. So, tonight, she's here to remind us that midlife isn't something to survive, it's something to awaken through. So, welcome, Marisha. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it immensely.
And also, Marisha, you have worked with women for decades.
I
What do
have.
you think? Yes. So, what do you think makes midlife such a critical and misunderstood phase?
So I think it starts much earlier than that. I think, to be quite honest with you, that women's internal knowing is um, disqualified from when they first become mothers, if not even earlier than that. But I think the reality is that women's lived experience, women's voices, and women's intuition is so incredibly powerful that it's discounted much of the time. And in fact, it's almost demonized in modern medicine. Because if
Yeah.
women were to claim their internal power, and I don't mean that in an aggressive way or an anti patriarchal way at all. What I'm saying is, if women came to realize the fullness of our power and what we are truly capable of, we would not only heal the world, but we would essentially destroy anything that was not in the best interest of humanity. And so women's voices need to be disempowered. Women are disempowered. And one of the times that we see that so acutely is in midlife.
Yes, that's so true. And also, what shifts when we stop seeing it as an ending and start treating as an initiation?
Well, I mean, you have to remember, for those women who have children, and of course not every woman does, but let's assume that still 80% of women choose to have children. So much of our adult lives from the time that we have children are engaged in caretaking for our children or our spouses or our partners. And all of a sudden at midlife, our children are mostly out of the house, maybe not entirely, but mostly. We have the capacity to spend more time focusing on ourselves and our own health. And when that happens, especially in light of all of the life experience that a woman has had up until 45, 50, 55, there's more time for a woman to sit and really contemplate who she truly is, to return to that inner compass of following her own. Again, I believe that that is dangerous to not only the medical system, but to the conventional system, to the matrix, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call it. Because again, if women were to recognize what it is that we are truly capable of and be teaching that to our children and raising future generations that way, we can no longer be controlled in the way that we are. And we have an opportunity at midlife to really spend time looking at ourselves and our own needs that maybe we haven't had for decades before that, because we were raising families. And all of a sudden, there's this opportunity to return to yourself and investigate who you are, to really create your purpose for the next 20 or 30 years of your life. And instead of doing that from an empowered and embodied perspective, women are once again devalued. Their intuition is devalued. Their sense of knowing in their own body is completely disqualified.
Yes, that reframing alone feels like medicine, like putting the soul back into biology. Thank you for showing us
Absolutely.
that. Yes.
Absolutely.
And also, you often say you are your own best medicine. So, what
Yes.
does that really mean in the context of midlife health?
So part of it is what you just said. It's putting ourselves back into our own medicine. But The way that I look at you are your own best medicine is really from a twofold, it speaks to two fundamental truths. First, you are your greatest expert. You know your body's history. You know your children's patterns. You know when something feels off with your health, even when lab work, blood tests, or a medical doctor say you're fine. I often discuss how so many of my patients would be diagnosed well. They were diagnosed healthy when they knew that they weren't. They knew there was something wrong because they felt that internal shift physically, physiologically, mentally, emotionally, something was off. But if it didn't fit the framework of clinical diagnosis, then they would be diagnosed well. They were fine. But a woman's inner knowing, anyone's inner knowing, is extremely valid, valuable data that no external authority has the right to discard or to access. And when we start to pay attention to that deep inner knowing, we can also call it our body's wisdom or our intuition. We start to have this capacity to become our most powerful healer. Now, that takes real bravery. It takes courage. True healing takes courage to do deep inner work, to unravel toxic exposures, emotional toxins, or physical toxins, or environmental toxins, to unravel trauma, whether it's physical or chemical or emotional, even if it was from our family history, a previous life that we don't even know of. There is work that we can do to look at what is this mindset that I came into this world with? How can I address it? Let alone the trauma that we encounter in our lives. And then when we reconnect with our body's wisdom, we have this incredible knowledge base to address root causes of our health and wellness and to prevent many health issues without then becoming dependent on external authority or external interventions. Now, that doesn't mean that we should never listen to medical advice or holistic health advice from, an herbalist, a homeopath, an Ayurvedic practitioner, a chiropractor. I'm not saying ignore all of those people. But when we know who we are and what our history is and how we're truly feeling and what has led us to feel unwell, and we go see a practitioner with that knowledge where we are our own very strong advocate, then when somebody tells you, oh, you're just fine, or if somebody tells you because you're perimenopausal that you should just have a hysterectomy because you don't need your uterus anymore anyway, then standing in your own embodiment that that is a complete lie for you and you would never accept it. But when we look at outside authority as the truth and we discount our own inner knowing, then we are very easily controlled into drugs and surgical interventions that are dangerous and not beneficial.
Yes, that's really wonderful. And thank you for sharing this with us. And how do we begin to trust our bodies again after years of ignoring or overriding them?
It's a very good question. And there are simple ways to go about doing it. Two of the most powerful ways that I know are getting back into nature, removing ourselves from the constant noise that we are exposed to with the devices that we hold in our hands and the devices that we look at on a screen. Because that noise these days is almost entirely fear-based, almost entirely. And it's very hard to be in our own truth and trusting the wisdom of our bodies when what we're being exposed to is this constant fear-mongering, constant. So that would be one. Another one is, and it's so simple and completely free, is to learn to trust our breath, to start to harness our ability to feel our bodies by using our breath. So closing our eyes, putting a hand on our chest and on our stomach, and breathing calmly, slowing ourselves down, focusing on what we're feeling inside. Is the breath moving? When we breathe in, does our chest rise and fall? Does our belly rise and fall? Does one of them not move as much as the other? Can we play a little game where we move more of the breath to one part of the body than another? When we can start to feel that, then we can start to feel our feet firmly connected to the ground or to the earth outside. Can we start to imagine at first, envision energy moving down through our feet into the earth and coming up from the earth into our bodies, so that we start to dissolve this sense of division between us and the natural world? Can we move energy through our bodies? Can we start to hear or see those areas where there isn't movement or there isn't light, and start to direct it, even if at first we believe that we're hallucinating? That's okay. Can you move that light or that breath into areas that feel heavy or dark? That's in the physical body. Those are two ways to do it. One other way that I really like is when we're feeling like we are disengaged or fearful or uncertain of the next direction, is to very simply ask ourselves, does this feel heavy or does this feel light? Because fear and excitement feel the same in the body for the most part. And unless we're able to discern which is which, we might think that we're acting from a place of excitement when it's not, or we're fearful of something when it's just excitement. And if we ask whether the situation that we're encountering, does this feel true to me, is basically what we're trying to figure out. But if you don't necessarily know what truth feels like in your body, and truth has a very clear feeling, it might be in your throat, it might be in your gut, it might be in your heart, where you feel like that's yes, that feels delicious, that feels like something I can fall into, and it feels safe and it feels like growth. Or does this feel heavy and dark, which is something that we don't want to walk into? So if you're being told as a woman that you need a medical procedure, like why not have a hysterectomy because you don't need your uterus anymore at 50? Close your eyes, breathe, wait, don't answer yet, and see, does that feel like a true statement for me? It can take a little bit of time to figure out what truth feels like and what a yes and a no feels like in our body, if, like you said, we've been ignoring it for decades. I mean, truthfully, children are the most powerful beings at doing this. They know who's safe, who's not safe, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. But what do we teach them as adults? We teach them to override that. You don't want that food? Well, you're going to eat that food, or you're not going to be allowed to go outside or play with your friends or watch television. And we teach them to override that deep inner knowing. And we need to get back to not only encouraging that in our children, but learning to feel it ourselves again. So those are a few very, very simple ways, without needing, to do all sorts of courses and workshops and see all sorts of healers, where we can start to listen to that inner truth. And then we can expand out and read and seek other people who can help us to expand that. But the early work is so simple to do on our own. We just need to take the time to do it.
Yes, that radical responsibility you speak of, it sounds both empowering and confronting.
That's a very good point. Thank you. Yeah, it probably is a little bit, isn't it?
Yes,
Because
yes, definitely.
especially if we haven't taken it, because if we take radical responsibility for our health and our lives,
Yeah.
what our thinking brain thinks is that means that I am acting in opposition to some sort of authority that is either going to chastise me or berate me, or social media will try to cancel me, or and we live in a society right now where all of those things might be true. And yet,
Yes.
the more of us who can say, doesn't matter. I am claiming responsibility for my life. I believe in my own freedom and sovereignty. I believe in my inner authority outside, and regardless of complying with external authority.
Yeah.
We
That
are taught, we're socialized in our lives, no matter what culture or country you live in, we are socialized to believe that experts lie outside of us, that love lies outside of us, that God or divinity lies outside of us, that truth lies outside of us, because we have forgotten that all of those things need to first be felt internally. Our own
yeah.
truth, our connection to the divine, our connection to love. We don't need external authority for that. But until we start to feel or reclaim that inner compass, which then leads us to knowing who we are and claiming radical responsibility for ourselves, that allows us then to make informed decisions for ourselves, informed decisions about our bodies, to choose the food and the medicine that connects us to our freedom and our sovereignty. And then every move we make either moves us toward greater dependence or greater independence.
Yeah. Yes, that's so true. And thank you for, pointing this. And also, you blend chiropractic, midwifery, and natural healing. So, how do these worlds intersect when it comes to supporting women at midlife?
So I first did graduate work in child development, child assessment and counseling, and applied to and got accepted to chiropractic. But even while I was in chiropractic school, my understanding of health was not just that you need to move a bone or align a joint. Health was so much more to me than that. It was this physical, chemical, emotional, spiritual, past history, everything in our lives that brought us to this place where we were. And while I was still in chiropractic, my own intuition just blew open at one point. I received my very first craniosacral treatment from another student, and literally my intuition just blew open. And I started to be able to put my hands on somebody, on a patient, and feel and see in my own body what was going on in theirs. It was the craziest thing. But I'd also been debating whether I wanted to be a midwife. And so I worked as a chiropractor for a few years to apply to midwifery and went through the training and was present at quite a few births, but ended up walking away from midwifery fairly early on just because of my own personal relationship and the marriage I was in at the time and all those kinds of things. But what all of that did was it helped me understand that what was most important to me and what I'm still passionate about 26 years after graduating is raising healthy kids naturally, looking at not taking us back to pioneering days, but looking at the best of raising children in nature from a much simpler perspective and how that benefits them emotionally and physically and physiologically. And then blending that with all of the work that I did, um, not again, I'm a chiropractor by training, but most of my work was spent in learning about herbalism and homeopathy and essential oils and vibrational medicine and sound healing and just an energy and so many workshops like that. And then my 5 years in midwifery as well, which to me, birth, looking into the eyes of a newborn, is the closest that we come to seeing God in this life, to be perfectly honest with you. And being with a woman at what is the probably the most physically and emotionally challenging time that she will ever have in her life. Probably. For some women, maybe it's not. And being present with that raw power and just holding space for it, not intervening, but being present and being honored to observe and hold that energy with her and then have this glorious newborn baby come from that. It became everything that I wanted to do. And so at some point in my chiropractic career, I actually chose to only work with women and children. And my husband, who practices chiropractic from a very energetic place like I do, he took over all of my male patients because I just wanted to keep working with women and children. And now that I'm no longer in active chiropractic practice, all of my work now is really a culmination of the 26 years plus the training that I did, all of the training, where these are the two populations I still want to work with because I still believe that we change the world when we raise healthy children and we empower women to know themselves and step into their own embodied wisdom.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And you also talk about the children's health. So, in today's world of overstimulation,
Hmm.
what is one natural practice you recommend every child to have access to?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I think every child should not have access to, and then one thing that every child could have access to. I think so around 2010, I started to see a huge uptick, I mean, huge, in children's anxiety and depression and the resultant over medicating of children for behavioral and emotional issues, even from the age of toddlers, 2 and 3-year-olds being given medication for anxiety. What 3-year-old has anxiety? But they were the most over medicated population with off-label use of drugs that were never tested for children being given to children. And more people coming to me with children struggling with behavioral issues, and every teacher wanting 3/4 of their class assessed for behavioral issues to put them on pharmaceutical medication. And there were a few things happening at that time. We really started to see a huge upsurge in the use of smartphones around 2010, and children being given these devices who do not have the neurological capacity to actually know what to do with these things. I mean, you've got a child whose brain is still hardwiring, literally hardwiring at the age of 3 and 5 and 7 and 10, and you're handing them a device that can move so fast, that has images flying past them, that they can access virtually anything online that is absolutely not meant for their eyes. There's a young woman in her early 20s who's a fantastic writer. Her name is Freya India. And I just read a piece by her. Her writing is beautiful. And she just wrote how they are a generation that has never known love without pornography. I mean, God help us. So our kids have access to things that they should never have access to. I would have women come into my practice for their own health to get an adjustment or to see me or to talk about, whatever. And they would put their cell phone in their baby's car seat in front of a 6-month-old so that the baby could watch YouTube and listen to music. And by the time that child was 18 months, they could open YouTube on their mother's phone or iPad, flip to the music they wanted, and start watching it.
Yes.
Those things, we need to walk that back. We didn't understand because it was sold to us as this is the most convenient, brilliant, you have access to the world, and we do. But we need to use these things responsibly. And so the first thing that I would say is we need to stop giving our children access to social media until they're teenagers. We need to stop giving them access to smartphones until they're teenagers. And I don't mean 13, I mean 16, 17-year-olds who have had plenty of time to develop intellectually and emotionally before they're handed these devices. So that's one thing. I think what we can give every child is far more understanding of we as parents actually need to understand the importance of play in children's development. We've stopped this. And I understand that some people live in cities that aren't safe or other areas that aren't safe. There has got to be a space that every child can be outdoors for part of every day. Or we have to make an inner courtyard in our house safe, or a room that is completely device-free with big bright lights. There is a way to connect our children back into the natural world. We've stopped allowing our children to climb trees because we think that's dangerous. Meanwhile, we're allowing them to be online unsupervised and have no understanding of how dangerous that is. And so like I said, we don't need to go back to Little House on the Prairie pioneering days, but we do need to return to something that is more life affirming than all of this technology is. I'm not discounting the importance or the usefulness of technology in our life, but it cannot rule us. We need to be in control of it. And we need to teach our children how to do that as well, because it is so addictive. We know how addictive it is. It's addictive for us as adults. They are incapable of holding their own against that addictive tendency. And we need to help them do that.
Yes, that is so true. And thank you for sharing this with us. And also thank you for sharing all your knowledge, your experiences, and your story. I think this time is very short to listen more about you, but yes, this is the show and we have a time limit. So if our listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Right now, the best way is through my website. I had gotten away from all social media in 2020 when the world was a little bit insane. So I'm just starting to get a bit more of a social media presence again. Right now, the best way is through my website, and that is elementalhealingarts.life. And from there, you can subscribe to my newsletter, which goes out every week, or I've got a free guide on there called the Energy Elevation Blueprint that you are very welcome to sign up for and to claim. So that's the best way for now. As I start to do my own podcasts and as I start to bring in more social media, then all of that will be available on the website.
Yes, and I will make sure to attach all the details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you and listen more from you because you're a wonderful person and I'm really honored to have you on my show. And to all my listeners, midlife isn't a crisis, it's a crossroad. And Dr. Marisha reminded us tonight that the body isn't breaking down, it's breaking open. So tune in, come home to yourself, and remember your health doesn't live in a pill or a plan. It always lives in your power. Until next time, keep walking forward with reverence for the wise and wild medicine within. Thank you.